Let's start it off. The big story this week has been, will they or won't they, NASCAR give the waiver to Kyle Larson? They've decided to give the waiver to Kyle Larson, so he is now playoff eligible again. Right move?
I think yes. I think it was the move that made the most sense. And something that I've talked a little bit about this week is it would be, by letter of the rule book, it would be understandable why they would deny it. But I think with precedent and publicity and the word that Elton Sawyer used about effort to be in Charlotte, if you want to say yes, you want to say the right decision, common sense prevailed, certainly understand it. Waivers have been given for far less, I feel like, some waivers that should have been denied. So at this point, it kind of felt like the only move was to give him the waiver.
Deb, how do you feel about it?
I think it was the correct thing to do. But a lot of people don't understand. They say, well, why didn't they give the waiver before the race? They don't understand the procedure, and that is the team has to apply for the waiver. So they didn't even apply for the waiver. NASCAR can't grant a waiver until they apply for it. But, I think NASCAR needs to reevaluate its waiver system right now because of this situation. Because what's to stop a driver to say, well, I want to go drive the 24 hours of Le Mans, I should be granted a waiver. So they need to look at that. And, it's a situation where I know every situation is different. But if you go back and read Kyle Larson's statements leading up to the race, he always said, my priority is the 600. And then on race day, that suddenly changed. And I also wonder what role having the same team owner for Indy and the 600 also played into it. So, I don't think it was really all of Kyle's decision to be there, and I think that entered into the decision as well. I think it was, as Kelly said, the common sense decision. It was the logical thing to do. It was the right thing to do because he did make an effort to get here. He would have been in the race had it not been rain shortened. But I think NASCAR really needs to go look at its waiver system and tweak it a little bit because so they don't run into a situation of a driver saying, like I said, I want to go run the 24 hours of Le Mans. I want to run the Baja, and you should give me a waiver. So they need to head that off at the pass.
Well, and I think Elton Sawyer expressed that this week too, Kelly, and you talked about one of the things he said, but I think one of the things that irritated, for lack of a better term, NASCAR was the fact that they said until Sunday morning, the 600s are a priority. Mm-hmm. That once it became apparent that they were not going to be able to start both races, then all of a sudden it became, well, we're going to stay here at Indy and start this one, mm-hmm. and we'll miss the start of the 600. I think that irritated NASCAR a little bit. And the fact that NASCAR, after the Gateway race, came out with the point standings and had no playoff points for Kyle Larson, that was one of these kind of, all right.
We're going to make you sweat.
We're going to make you sweat a little bit.
We're going to make you think about it.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree, and I don't know if anybody will ever admit to that publicly, but I personally, yes, I do think if I was NASCAR, it would bother me. It absolutely would bother me because, as you just said, all leading into that Memorial Day weekend, the conversation from Kyle Larson, from Rick Hendrick, from anybody who asked was NASCAR is the priority. We're racing for a championship. I need to be at the Coca-Cola 600. That's my day job. That is where we earn points. And then Sunday morning of the Indianapolis 500, when the weather moves in, Kyle Larson is on NBC Sports Television talking about, I want to be here. This is my priority. We need to run this race. Now, yes, a lot of effort, of course, went into both of these efforts. But again, if I'm NASCAR, and all indication publicly and privately from Hendrick Motorsports and Kyle Larson is you understanding this is your day job, and then suddenly you're on television saying otherwise, of course I'm going to be offended. I'm going to be hurt. I'm going to be like a jilted lover, right? Like whatever expression you want to use, I'm going to be upset because you are choosing someone else over us. You are perfectly capable of competing in the Coca-Cola 600, and you are choosing not to. And I understand, it's a slippery slope. Everybody wants to talk about intent and, well, he meant to be there and he wanted to run both races. To me, that's not where the argument should be. The argument is he chose Indianapolis over starting the Coke 600. And that's what it says in the rule book. He is supposed to start every race. So, yeah, if I'm NASCAR, like I said, I don't know if anybody will ever publicly admit it, but I absolutely would have been like, that would have been a punch to the gut of he is choosing someone else. And that is why I also understand fans when they get upset about it, because that's what it comes across as.
It's not like Deb that he started the Indy 500 and then they had rain, and it was kind of like, well, we need to stick this out. They knew before he started the race that there was no, because both races started about the same time.
Very true. Very true. And, I think that's probably the reason NASCAR took so long to make its decision, was because you had that faction in NASCAR that was saying, look, he chose them over us. And it's like Kelly said, it's definitely like a jilted lover. And he said this was his priority. Now he's saying it's not his priority. So I think there was quite an argument within NASCAR itself. And I think that's another reason they took so long to make the decision.
It was one of those things. You almost use the term damage control from NASCAR standpoint. If they had come down and said, here's the letter of the law, he didn't start the race, he chose to run another series, no points. Mm-hmm. NASCAR was in a no-win situation here.
Yeah, they absolutely were in a no-win situation, because now, granted, I feel like everything NASCAR does is normally a no-win situation, right? Because there's always folks that are going to find a reason to disagree with any decision that they make.
What is it Jim Utter says? There's only two things NASCAR fans don't like: change and the way things are.
Right. But it's absolutely true. So yes, I mean, no matter what they would have did, somebody would have been upset. I feel like, though, in this case, everybody talks about the publicity of it. This would have been bad publicity, no matter which way you fall on, whether you agreed with it or not, because you had a majority, or you have at least the vocal people in the industry, from drivers and crew chiefs and other people to race fans, who are all saying, give him the waiver. This is awesome. Like, it was good what he did for the sport. It was good that people were paying attention to Indy, and then Indy was paying attention to NASCAR. And then if NASCAR would have came out and said, that's all good and well, but he didn't follow the rules, yeah, they absolutely would have been torn to shreds. So it was a no-win situation in that regard. So saying, damage control or this was the path of least resistance, I think I had even said that in my column, like, at this point, yeah, you're just trying to limit the rest of the damage, because now people are mad that you're taking 7 days to decide whether you're going to do the waiver or not. So either way, they were going to get torn to shreds, but it would have been even worse the rest of this week leading into Sonoma, just the trail of fire that everybody would have had following NASCAR if they had not granted that waiver.
And that's the thing. Up to that point, up until that day, the day of the races, Deb, it had kind of been the old story of, the rising tide raises all boats, because this had been a positive for everybody. Everybody had been getting pub out of this, and positive pub.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at the publicity that Kyle Larson brought to the All-Star race. I mean, people were following the jet landing and the helicopter going from the airport in Wilkesboro over to the track. And there was a tremendous amount of publicity there, just like it always gets anytime somebody does the double. But, yes, Kelly's right. NASCAR was in a no-win situation, but they had to do the damage control, the rational thing that made sense. Sometimes what you have to do to make sense, or the common sense thing to do, isn't necessarily the letter of the law.
Deb said earlier that this is a good opportunity, Kelly, for NASCAR to look at the waiver rule, reevaluate it, and tweak if necessary. Would you agree with that? And if so, what would you do?
So I had written Monday that my feeling was NASCAR needed to grant the waiver based on precedent. And what I mean by precedent, because some folks have countered me on that, saying, well, we've never encountered this situation. The precedent being that more times than not, NASCAR grants every waiver that they come across, right? That's what I mean by precedent, okay? Mm-hmm. So my feeling was, you grant the waiver, but then you need to rewrite the policy. I absolutely believe that. And that is the topic of my column this week on Racer, because I feel like that this waiver situation has evolved into something it was never meant to evolve into. Mm-hmm. And I could be wrong, but when this policy was presented to everyone, it was presented as a medical exception, because we don't want drivers racing hurt. We don't want drivers hiding injuries because they know they have to start these races. It has evolved into, X driver gets suspended because your actions are so egregious. We don't want you on the racetrack, but don't worry, you're still going to be championship eligible. Here's a waiver. Like, it's turned into, we have age requirements in the Craftsman Truck Series that because we need you to get experience and be 18 years old before you can run the full season. But don't worry, we're still going to give you a waiver, even though we don't want you running those races, right? It turned into Matt Kenseth coming off the bench after almost a year and a half away and getting a waiver because he was hired by Chip Ganassi to fill Kyle Larson's seat when he was. It just has evolved into something that NASCAR has backed themselves into this broad corner that anytime something happens now to a driver that they can't run a race for some reason, I'm just going to ask for a waiver. And why wouldn't I get it? Because everybody gets waivers. So I feel like this needs to be rewritten back to just a medical exemption waiver. And if people are worried about drivers being championship eligible if they miss a race or not, if your performance is good enough, you'll be championship eligible. So my qualifications would be, if I'm rewriting the rule, it's either a medical exemption or to be championship eligible, you have to be a full-time driver in that series, either win a race or be top 16 in points. If your performance is good enough, whether you miss a race or not, you should be able, your performance should carry you to the playoffs. So I'm completely against now this whole waiver policy of saving drivers to make sure they stay championship eligible. I think it's completely evolved into just, again, it's chaos now because you could just ask for a waiver for anything. It's kind of just ridiculous. So yeah, I think they need to rewrite it. I was a little disappointed Elton didn't flat out say that they were going to look at maybe changing it, and that he said he anticipates they're not going to change it, but that's the road they want to keep going down, and they're going to keep being backed into this corner.